I smell coffee. That coffee. Smells like coffee. All right. You ready? I'll just ask if the clerks are ready to go, and they look like they are ready to go. Videographer's ready to go. All right. The question now remains whether the mayor is ready to go. And the all right, let's get started then. First of all, welcome to our meeting. Good evening to all here and at home watching. We're going to call our meeting to order, and we'll immediately go to roll call, please. I am here.
Here.
Councilmember Barrick.
Here.
Councilmember Spoterato.
Here.
Councilmember Summers.
I'm here.
Everybody's present and accounted for. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're on to item 3, adoption of our agenda. We may have a couple changes. I'll confirm by looking to the clerk. Mr. Clerk, do we have some changes that need to be noted on our agenda?
Yes, item 10.3 is being moved to a date uncertain, and item 10.4 was previously moved to a date certain of next week, November 25th.
All right. Then with those changes, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll motion to adopt.
Second motion.
Motion and a second to adopt the agenda as amended by the clerk, as he just stated. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? None. That motion passes unanimously. We're on to public forum. Anybody wishing to speak to your council tonight, you have 4 minutes. This is on matter. Oops, are you okay?
Yep, my first.
Take your time. This is on matters that are not on the agenda. Welcome.
Well, good evening, City Council. I've put 2 comments in the public forum. My short comment today is that I would just like to request to put these 2 items on future agendas. That's it. Thanks. Oh, should I say my name? My name is Michelle Lou Cavell, and
right,
I live
thank you.
on Park Street in St. Helena.
Thank you. Mr. Belt, looks like you're approaching.
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. And good evening, everyone. And I apologize, I've never been a very good public speaker, so I'm going to have to read my comments tonight. I did submit a letter also for this particular process, so I've asked Andrew to present each one of you with a copy of a worksheet that I put together. I'm here tonight because I have a concern as a citizen and for all the water customers in St. Helena that the current city's water neutral policy is inadequate. And the worksheet that I've given you tonight, I've shared with Mr. Leach, and I've actually presented this information before, but never in the detail that I've given you tonight, that the current water neutral policy basically allows or projects that each occupant of the new dwellings, new homes, will use 35 gallons per day per occupant. And it's just grossly underestimates what really that will be used, in my opinion, in consideration of the current water neutral policy that allows for 2 people per bedroom in each house. Currently, there are plans for 119 homes to be developed on Spring Street. Plus, there are 41 new low-income houses to be developed across the Vintage Hall. Tonight, City Council is considering whether or not placing Adams Street under the Surplus Land Act, which could open the door for more homes or a luxury hotel resort. And in addition, the Bank of America Hotel is being considered for approval, and the Aliyah Hotel is currently seeking a greater allotment of water to its current water agreement with the city. There is a common thread that all these projects have in common, and that is the city's outdated water neutral policy. I brought this matter up before during city council meetings and with Mr. Leach, but I don't believe the city is placing enough priority on the need to revise the policy. The only place I've seen the matter is on the Water and Wastewater Committee's agenda as one of the several future topics to be discussed in the future. I believe the biggest problem with the current policy is that it does not generate enough in lieu fees to achieve water neutrality, especially in as much as that we no longer do retrofitting anymore. In order to achieve water neutrality, the city has a few options to choose from. It could either increase the in lieu fees to provide tertiary water for new housing and hotel development, or it could increase the in lieu fees to help reduce the city's unaccountable water loss in its water system, which varies from 15 to 20% every year. Based upon 2024's total annual water production of 461 million gallons, a 1% decrease in the city's unaccountable water loss would equate to an increase of 4,618,000 gallons a year, which would go a long way towards providing the extra water some of these projects will use in a year. One way to increase in lieu fees and achieve water neutrality would be to correlate the cost of in lieu fees for a project to the percentage cost of the development. In other words, if a housing development has a total development cost of $10 million, a 10% in lieu fee would equate to $1 million. The above 10% in lieu fee I've just used as a random number to make a point. It's really not significant. But one thing should be clear. City Council has the ability to prioritize, the revision of the current water neutral policy, and if it is delayed much further, the above developments approved will create a larger burden for St. Helena water customers. Thank you for all your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Belt, for finishing. All right, others wishing to approach and address your city council tonight? All right, I'll close the public forum. Any items from my council members? Go ahead. Yeah.
And we had addressed the water neutrality. I thought there was a date for that. Is this the appropriate time for it being on a future agenda?
Now's the time to have a conversation. Yes, go ahead. I was about to have it too, but you can go first.
Staff has been working on it, and I will tee it up to ACM Leach for explanation.
So we had started the capital project related to both safe yield and water neutrality about a year ago, and then realized once we got through the safe yield process and started to embark on the water neutrality component, that we needed to tie projects that were, as Mr. Belt mentioned, projects that increased efficiency of the system, reduced losses, those types of things. And then we realized, there's a better way to manage our overall water portfolio, and that kind of sprang forth the water management plan, of which we're about 50% of the way through with the consultant. So the idea is once we complete the water management plan, then we'll go into the water neutrality and the development of projects and a fee program related to compliance. So I can't really give you, I can't give you a date certain for neutrality at sometime in 26, unfortunately. Let's go mid.
All right, I mean, the question is well intended, and this has been being under review for quite some time, so I understand the frustration from the community. Good points to be made. I'm on one of the subcommittees that deals with water, and we've been talking about this for a while, so even an update. Let me ask a follow-up question to Ms. Deasy. Will this be, I assume this will be vetted, the sort of the leanings of the staff and the consultant will be presented to the committee itself so that there could be a fleshing out at that point, or will it come to the council? What is the thinking by the staff?
Yeah, in terms of process, Mayor, I'm assuming you're referring to bringing the
actual draft of the
to the Water Wastewater Advisory Committee. Is that the committee you're referring to?
Right. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. It may be of value, Mr. Camello, to maybe bring back, I don't know if we can talk about it now in great detail, but just a sense of how work is handled, when folks have ideas in the community. And there's a frustration that builds up after a while. They come and then they don't, sometimes they don't exactly know the process. And obviously, and it's a very fluid process based on staff capacity, based on priorities deemed important by the council, based on resources, based on politics, frankly, based on a lot of different things. And that was one of the questions, one of the letters touched upon that. And I think it would be just good, maybe through a newsletter or through some kind of vehicle, just to say, this is how it happens. This is our process. We have a procedural manual that we follow at the council. But it may be important or significant enough to enough people in the community to go, oh, well, how do I get something on an agenda, just the nuts and bolts of that, and then sort of ultimately it's your decision. We can say, hey, we're going to suggest that you delve into this issue, but you have the authority under our rules of procedure to go, this is based on the resources we have, the capacity we have, and all the other decisions you have to make as a city manager. That's a major part of the council manager form of government. But do you think it would be worthy of just sending out a note to the public saying this is kind of how it works, using all those resources? Because I think it is a good question, and I think some people are maybe would find it interesting how we do that.
It is, and let me just say that April Mitz, our former ACM, had written an article right before she left. I think it was in March or April last year, where she described how items get into and taken action by the council. But such questions, and by the way, this is a very important question on the net neutrality for water. We have struggled internally with that issue. Of course, it's always about balancing the existing work plan that you have determined for us with the urgency of other projects, and when you have staff capacity issues, then we have to prioritize as best we can. I just got to say that on the issue of water neutrality, it is affecting us in many different ways. I'm having development conversations, Director De Rosa and I are having development conversations with potential developers on various projects, and we have to disclose to them that we have this policy that's outdated, that we are working on, that we need to complete. And for them to make informed decisions, they need to factor into it how they're going to comply with our water neutrality rules. And so it is an impediment, but it's one of those things where we're working through, and we need the data before we can have a coherent plan, and we're working on it. But to your larger point, yes, I will endeavor to write an article, maybe in the newsletter, that describes it a little bit better.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, those were important issues that our community is engaging upon. Our council obviously has the same interest in both of those to make sure that our community is educated on the issues. Then they can engage more effectively with us. They will be frustrated. Let people know we get frustrated too at council. You know, there are things that we want our management to do, and then we're told often, well, you have to be a little bit more disciplined. Mr. Mayor, you know, that's down on the list, and we all face that challenge, so I appreciate that. All right, anything else from my colleagues? Okay, let's move along then. We have a long agenda tonight. And thank you for all the other comments. There's one from Deanna Griffin that I've read and acknowledged. Ms. Covell had two, and then Joshua Park also had. The one by Joshua Park actually may fall within another area. It looks like it's an SLA comment, but I don't know if that's a big deal or not. It's still there, and we should all read the comment that he made. All right, let's go on to reports by staff, city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. As I do most of the time, after a closed session, I turn to our city attorney to report out on our closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as you know, immediately prior to this meeting, in a special closed session, the City Council met for a conference with labor negotiators regarding negotiations with the St. Helena Employees Association, the Police Officers Association, the Professional Firefighters Association, and the city's unrepresented employees, and there's no reportable action from that closed session.
All right. Mr. Comello, you're on. Do you have any announcements or staff reports from your staff?
None, Mr. Mayor.
All right. All right. We have no presentations or public recognitions. We have apparently no other staff briefing. We are on to the consent calendar. We have several items here. And if anyone wants to seek clarification or have more discussion on any item, that's fine. We can do that. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent.
Second.
Let me, before we make a vote on that, Mr. Walsh, you want to bring something to my attention?
Confirm that you asked the public if anyone wanted to pull an item.
That was intended for the public also. Yeah, anybody from the public wishing to seek other clarification or have public comment on any item. I didn't think I saw anyone make a move, but thank you, Mr. Walsh. All right. Who made the motion? Who made the second?
I made the
Thank you.
motion, Mayor.
Did you get that, Mr. Clerk? All right. Then all in favor of adopting the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Looks like all ayes, right? I didn't hear them, but I assume that they're all ayes. A unanimous decision there, and we'll move on. All right, we're on to public hearings. We have, the first matter is under 10.1, and it's entitled, as it's written here, Reed Woodson, 270 Pratt Avenue, short-term rental, STR, tourism occupancy tax appeal. And looks like this is, will be presented by the attorney initially, and then
Sure.
staff.
So, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'll do is I'll kind of go through the procedure
Thank you.
that we'll conduct as far
right.
as this hearing goes, because this is something that's a little bit unusual for us.
All right.
And then you can take it from there. So, so this is Mr. Woodson appealed a levy of transient occupancy tax against his short-term rental. He owned a short-term rental in town and was levied that tax. He appealed that. It initially went through an administrative process where he had an administrative hearing that Mr. Leach conducted as the hearing officer. Mr. Leach upheld the tax, and then in our code, what it provides for is the next step in the process is that the appellant can appeal that to council, and then city council holds a hearing on that item. So that's what you're doing tonight. You will hold that hearing. Your review it's what's called de novo. So you're really looking at this freshly. You're not giving any deference to what Mr. Leach decided. You are going to hear this kind of fresh, taking the evidence that you received tonight and that you had in your packet, and then make a decision based on that. And so the order of process that we're going to go through is first we'll let Mr. Woodson present his appeal to the council. Then city staff can respond to that, and city staff was assisted in that process by one of our code enforcement attorneys, Aaron Chandler. That's who's on the screen right now. So Mr. Chandler will assist staff in that process. Once city staff responds, then we'll give Mr. Woodson a chance for any rebuttal to city staff's responses, then public comment, and then we'll go back to the council and you can deliberate and make a decision on this. So Mr. Mayor, what I would ask is that you open the public hearing and then allow Mr. Woodson to begin his presentation.
And how long are the presentations and the rebuttals?
So under our code, we don't have a specific time limit for that. So let's try to keep the meeting moving along, but I don't want to restrict him to a specific time as we do. Obviously, for public comment, we would have our standard 4-minute limit.
All right, thank you so much. All right, then I will do as called. I'll open the public hearing, and I'll turn to Mr. Woodson to make his presentation.
Yeah, he was sent a Zoom link via email and registered mail and has not showed up. We're also looking at our email and have not received an email from him.
Okay.
I guess Mr. Woodson didn't want to give a presentation tonight. So then with that, I would let Mr. Chandler and staff offer a presentation with a rebuttal to his written appeal, which he provided in the staff report. So we'll do that. And then you can just, after the staff presentation, you can ask any questions that you may have, and then you can return to public comment and then deliberate as we would with a normal item.
All right.
So Aaron and Mandy, I would let you go ahead.
And just to be fair to Mr. Woodson, he did submit a fairly extensive comment or presentation, a written presentation that is part of our staff report.
He did,
He mentioned it,
I
so.
was under the impression he was going to show up, but I guess that was my mistake.
All right. Then I'll look forward to the staff's position presentation, sort of an outline of what the issues are and how we find ourselves at this appeal hearing. Mr. Chandler.
Good evening, Council. Aaron Chandler on behalf of the City of St. Helena. For the record, the notice was sent out November 4th of this particular hearing to Mr. Woodson. Of course, Mr. Woodson certainly filed an appeal to this particular matter. In relation to this particular matter, as a summary of the city's position that's already outlined in the administrative hearing order, city staff investigated a complaint regarding a unpermitted short-term rental and unpermitted business within the city. Based on that investigation, letters and information were sent out to Mr. Woodson. And it was found that he was operating the short-term rental from March 2020 up to about September of 2023. Mr. Woodson, of course, presented the city with receipts and records of his unpermitted short-term rental, showing the revenue that he incurred during this time. And of course, during this time, Mr. Woodson did not pay the required transient occupancy taxes. For purposes of this appeal under the code, Mr. Woodson is appealing the calculations that were made by Ms. Mandy Kellogg regarding what were the total past or delinquent transient occupancy taxes for this property at 270 Pratt. In response to Mr. Woodson's appeal, there are allegations of penalties that were assessed or possibly assessed, but however, those are not before City Council for consideration. Those fines and fees were not assessed. In addition to that, Mr. Woodson has not paid any particular amount to date. He's challenged these transient occupancy taxes, but he has not paid any in this particular matter. And as you can see in the hearing order, the calculations that were presented by Ms. Mandy Kellogg, totaling $48,566.05. And those were calculated under Municipal Code 3.28.020. And with that, if the council has any questions or needs clarification on any of the calculations, Ms. Mandy Kellogg is available, and I'm also available to discuss any legal or procedural questions regarding the prior hearing or this hearing that's before City Council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chandler. Any initial clarifying questions before I open it to public comment from my colleagues? All right, we have already opened the public hearing, but I'll invite any public comment on the matter from anyone in the audience. All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Mr. Woodson's not here for rebuttal, so we're on to deliberations. Any thoughts from any of my colleagues on the matter? Direction, sort of tying this up. Mr. Barrick.
So reading Mr. Woodson's appeal, there seems to be some accusations of the procedural fairness of the process. I think those, were those accurate from the city's perspective?
In this particular case, Mr. Woodson was certainly provided more than an ample and fair opportunity to review and appeal the calculations for the transient occupancy taxes. Mr. Woodson requested numerous continuances in order to gather further information. He requested a public records request for additional information to present his defense. And finally, we did have a hearing. The hearing was supposed to be before just the tax administrator, or at the time, which was Ms. Mandy Kellogg from the city. Mr. Woodson objected to that, and so independently and agreed to by both parties, the city and Mr. Woodson, we had an independent hearing officer come in from the city. I believe it was, his name's escaping me at the moment.
Mr. Leach.
Yeah, Joseph Leach, who heard the matter. Both sides had an opportunity to present their case or their defense, and a ruling was issued. And again, Mr. Woodson was allowed the opportunity pursuant to the code to appeal that decision before City Council here today and present his case or his defense. And I would note that Mr. Woodson was afforded that opportunity. However, he's not present today.
All right.
Mr. Chandler, specifically, did he made a claim that the city was aware that he was operating a short-term rental for, and I'm paraphrasing, a year or more before actually formally noticed? Was that the case? Is there any proof of that from a legal perspective? And I'm thinking more about liability. If we uphold the law, there seemed to be some insinuation that there could be further action. I'd like to understand that more from your perspective.
As to the specifics of that, I could let Ms. Mandy Kellogg expand on the initiation of the enforcement matter and whether they knew of it at a certain time. However, I would say on a legal civil liability issue, under state statute, no amount of time, whether it's noticed or unnoticed, no amount of time converts a violation into something that is permitted. So whether the city knew of it and didn't take enforcement, which is at their discretion, is no different than if initiated at the time of the enforcement or the notification that they took steps to enforce it. And in this particular case, the city's not necessarily enforcing the violation. They are enforcing their right to collect transient occupancy tax based on revenue incurred for a unpermitted business.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
If I can, want me to respond, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly. Mr. Mello.
So there are a couple of things here. One is that the dates are accurate as he's presented. The action, there were some reasons for that, including the fact that we found out subsequently that we needed to update the code itself, which we'll be bringing to the next meeting. But more importantly, the thrust of this particular action, as Mr. Chandler pointed out, is specifically whether or not the actual tax due is calculated accurately or not. That's the issue. Everything else is, from our perspective, superfluous. So we just need you to determine whether or not the tax that was levied was accurate and legitimately applied.
Understood. Thank you.
What do you think of that, Mr. Walsh? Is that accurate? I think that is accurate, but I'll turn to you.
Right, that's the issue that's before us. And to my knowledge, he did reference that certain individuals at the city were aware of that. Mr. Press, I believe it was Mr. Heacock, Mr. Presswich, and Councilmember Chateau. But we don't have record of that specifically coming up outside of that. So
I guess the point is that we're limited in the jurisdiction of what the issue is before us, so it won't stop Mr. Woodson from pursuing other claims at other times. If we don't pursue our claim, we lose that, or basically confirm the correctness of the calculation, and then obviously we don't have a right to pursue that in any way, whether as an offset or as a direct claim. So this doesn't necessarily prevent, I don't want to get into statute of limitations, all the other defenses that we could have, but he could exercise his right. But this may not be the forum for him to raise the issues he's raising. Or is it? I guess.
Right. The issue, like you said, the issue before you is the levying of the taxes.
Okay.
And whether or not we are aware of it or not wouldn't change the fact that you need to pay taxes on a transient occupancy.
All right. Other comments from my colleagues? Any other questions?
Just one more. I think he's essentially asking for a offset, right, for future legal penalties that he's inferring for us to scrub, give up our claim of the tax. Is that a correct assessment, or you probably have a more detailed legal assessment?
I think what he is saying is he is asking us to completely waive his transient occupancy tax in exchange for the suggestion that he won't pursue further legal action.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
All right. Good questions. Some clarity, some speculation about the future. Have we deliberated enough here? Anything else to be said on the matter? I think we've laid it out fairly clearly. It's a pretty limited decision. Which way are you going on this, Mr. Barrick, in the form of a motion?
I motion to accept the staff's recommendation.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further comment or discussion on the motion? So just to be clear, the recommended action, it says staff recommends City Council conduct a hearing, which we have conducted, deny the claim, and uphold the ruling of the hearing officer dated October 10, 2025. Motion and a second, and I'll look to the clerk for a roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Spoterato.
Yes.
Councilmember Summers.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
Yes.
Mayor Doring.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. We'll look forward to this matter hopefully coming to a close, but we never know in the law. All right. Refresh my recollection. So we're 10-3, 10-4 are not going to be heard tonight, but 10-2 is, so we'll move on to 10-2, introduction and waive the first reading of a proposed ordinance to approve and adopt zoning ordinance amendment ZOA 2025-002 to amend Section 1716-030 and Note 5, Section 1735-050A of the San Helena Municipal Code, also known as the porch issue. Just putting context on it, that's a lot of words there that don't mean anything to anyone. Is this yours, Mr. Rosa?
It is.
I'll turn to you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. You can go to the next slide, please. So this item, and it's just a brief overview following through the direction that you gave staff on July 22nd, where we had a policy discussion on should porches count or not count towards gross floor area. And so we got very clear feedback that we were to amend the code to go ahead and make that change. So we brought that formal zoning code amendment to the Planning Commission on October 21st. They unanimously recommended approval of that. Next slide, please. And just to orient you, the two parts of the code essentially that we focused on was the development standards table, which is the common place people go to figure out what are their development standards and what applies, doesn't apply. So there's a footnote 5 there. Next slide, please. And it refers to what you do if you have a balcony, porch, or deck. And so we've revised it with the strikeout and the underline showing the new language. So now it would read a balcony, porch, deck, or similar structure, whether covered or uncovered, would be exempt from gross floor area. Next slide, please. And then the other part of our code we have relates to how we measure items, rules of measurement. And so 1734 just cleans up some language that doesn't apply to residential gross floor area calculations because it was really relating to commercial buildings. So we went ahead and cleaned that up to more streamline the code. Next slide, please. And so that just wraps up the recommendation for the CEQA finding, and this action tonight would be the introduction and waive the first reading of this zoning ordinance as noted on your screen and in your staff report. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Anything else to add to that one, Mr. Camello? I know that I typically turn to you and introduce staff, but we bypassed that. I saw Ms. DeRosa sitting there, so anything else? No.
Nothing else. Thank
Any
you, sir.
clarifying questions from my colleagues before we open the matter? Okay, well, let me open the matter for public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to address the council on this particular item? Ms. Covell. Lou Covell.
Hello, good evening. My name is Michelle Lou Covell. I'm speaking as a resident, not as my role as a planning commissioner. I didn't really prepare anything tonight, but I wanted to mention that I like the edits that are on the screen and in the staff report. I would like to say that I did meet with Mr. Doring, Mayor Doring, and Vice Mayor Michelle Deasy on November 7th, privately with Dan Hale, Joshua Park, myself, and my husband, Charles Covell. And in conjunction with my public forum comment regarding how public comments are addressed, I would like to just say that I think that if we can answer that question of how public comments would be addressed, this and commented and responded to by city council and staff, I think this whole porch item could have been shortened a lot, and it could have saved the town quite a bit of money and resources and time in fees and staff and consultant fees. So if you go back to my public comment in the forum, and then you look back at my document that I submitted to you two, Mayor and Vice Mayor, that we met about, and I offered suggestions. I really hope that we can bring this discussion forth as a future agenda item in City Council, because I feel like it would be really important to discuss how communication happens between the City Council, staff, and public, so that we can do this more efficiently and constructively. And, we're a small town, and I think we have a lot of smart people here, and everybody wants the best for the town. And I think a lot of people want to spend less money and save money, and use that money towards other things that we really need. And I think I, again, support this item. And I just want to say that I am still expecting, hopefully, a reply from Mayor and Vice Mayor on the private meeting we had. Yes, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Others? I wouldn't think, this has been around for a while. I don't know if there are any need to get into the actual, the language of the ordinance. It seems fairly straightforward unless there's other questions. With respect to Ms. Clavell, frankly, it's just a matter of time, and the letter raises a lot of complex issues, and Vice Mayor and I haven't had a chance to consult on it. We will, and we'll try to figure out a way forward, keeping in mind all the other issues I raised before about staff resources, staff capacity, staff direction, but good issue to be raised, and we're working on it. Anything else, Mr. Comello? I see recommendations up there, but do you have anything on that subject?
Not on this subject,
Okay.
but
Please.
I was just going to make a general comment that rather than waiting to for an article or something of that sort, I just, by the way, forwarded you an article that was written by Ms. April Mitz last January. But to the point about public comment, we, as staff, we see that as information for you and for staff, but primarily for you, for decision-making and deliberations on policy matters. We, of course, there are a lot of times contradictory and variety of opinions mentioned in these letters. We, of course, will take direction from you should you want to go a certain direction. Other than that, unless we believe that it's a policy that requires your action, we don't bring it to you. So we kind of, on some issues, we depend upon you to tell us what you want us to work on.
All right. And that's a little bit slightly off topic, but it does deserve a response, and hopefully, I'm familiar with Ms. Mitz's article. I think it's really more of public education, and so that's what I was getting at there. But thank you for sharing that. Maybe we can repeat that with some updates or some nuances that you may now know about that are important to the community. Back on this topic, any discussion or concerns or questions from my colleagues? If not, I'll look for a motion. There is a recommendation up there unless somebody wants to go in a different direction, but that is the staff's recommendation.
Excuse me, Mayor, I just noticed a typo in line number 2. It should be ZOA 2025. I'm not sure how 2015 actually got in there, so.
Feels like it's been that long, that's why.
Yeah, someone was going to find it, so I just thought I'd bring it up. Thank you.
All right, with that amendment,
I'll make a motion to adopt the amendment.
or the staff recommendation with the amendment?
Yes,
Okay.
staff recommendation and the amendment. Thank you.
Second.
The motion to adopt the staff recommendation with the amended language that was brought forth by Mr. Rosa. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy,
Yes.
Councilmember Spoterato,
Yes.
Councilmember Summers,
Yes.
Mayor Dorn.
Yes. If I haven't done so, I may have neglected to close the public hearing. The hearing is closed. All right. Now, we're on to, if I'm not mistaken, we're on to item 11. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? All right. Just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Consideration of a resolution declaring city-owned Adam Street parcel to be surplus land under the Surplus Land Act. All right. Do you want to make some initial comments?
I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So a couple of things. One is that this, from staff perspective, this is long time this process has taken a long time, not the Adam Street issue particularly, but the sale of city properties. And I just want to point out why we even engaged in sale of any property. I generally believe that it's a personal opinion that if you have land, you want to hold on to it because you never know when you might need it for something else. That said, the council 3 years ago engaged in a process that explored a variety of options to address the fiscal challenges the city was facing, as well as the housing challenges that the city was facing. And as part of the process, the city council took a variety of steps to bolster our finances, including placing an item on the ballot. The city council also increased the user fees and impact fees, and putting or considering a sale of city property was one step in that process. I should also point out that the previous council did not take that decision lightly. Two of you were on that council. The thought process evolved over many months. A lot of those discussions, as appropriate, occurred in closed session, where real estate transactions need to be discussed according to the law. And ultimately, the council directed staff to initiate the Surplus Land Act process for the railroad property and the property on Main Street. We went through a long process. HCD gave us the permission, since we didn't have a valid or accepted offer on either of those properties for the amounts that were appraised. And so we had gone through an entire process where we engaged in an RFP to select a potential developer for both those properties. With the seating of the new council, as is appropriate, the council went through a similar process, evaluated its choices, looked at its finances, considered options, and again, the thinking has evolved a variety of times. And ultimately, here we are. Staff has been working on this for 2 years. So there's a side of me that says, wow, we are going to make a very important decision. I've been asked in the community, as well as in the first time by the previous city council, and I want to emphasize this, the previous city council did not take this decision lightly. They recognized, which I think the new council has recognized, which is that if you had to compare just those two properties, Main Street and Adam Street, the potential of Adam Street in terms of what it can do for civic options, in terms of housing, in terms of the raw value, is much greater. And so what we have brought to you today is the option for you to consider to declare the Adam Street property as surplus. That doesn't mean that we are not going to take action on Railroad and Main Street in the future. You could direct us to take some action on those properties as well. What's before you today, based on our recent conversation in different forums, is a potential action to declare Adam Street property surplus. If you so desire, we will then, as staff, engage with our consultant and put this out for RFP to request proposals for housing development. The Surplus Land Act requires that the property be offered to public agencies and to housing developers first. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. DeRosa for her presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Camillo. Mr. Rosa.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome again.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So, excuse me, for the benefit of those that haven't been participating in the earlier conversations of this, the city is in a very envious position to actually own so many assets, land assets. And so up on the screen here is high-level look at, we have the property that is currently where Parks and Recreation is on Railroad Avenue. That was a former City Hall site. We also own the 1480 Main Street, which is the original City Hall, if you will. The Adam Street parcel, which is the vineyard next to the library, and then the Carnegie Building, a Head Start building, and of course the Signorelli Barn, that sometimes we forget. Next slide. So Railroad Avenue, this, as City Manager Camello had mentioned in his opening remarks, has already gone through the SLA process. Former City Hall and current Parks and Recreation site in the housing element, it was designated for housing, and we went ahead and upzoned it to high-density residential in 2024. And then Main Street, as City Manager Camello had mentioned, we also went through that process earlier with HCD and got that designated as surplus land. I know there's been some questions about what exactly were the parcel lines of the splitting it from the fire department. So this is a graphic that actually was taken right out of the RFP for developers that were interested in building. And so you'll see the blue is the totality of the whole parcel that includes, on the left arm is the fire station, and then the red lines indicate where the area, the boundary that we would carve out for a future developer should they want to build on that site. And of course, immediately to the right, you have the Lyman Park. And then finally, the Adams Street parcel. So yeah, one of the reasons we're here tonight is to find out formally if we do want to go ahead and move forward with the Surplus Lands Act process like we did with the other two properties. This property is a total of 5.6 acres. It includes the vineyards. It does not actually include the library. Its appraised value is at about $18 million. I do want to highlight, I think there was a typo in the staff report that mentioned the appraised value was more like $17 million. So it is $18 million. We did get prior proposals that bid it for $22 million in 2018. And then if you want to flip to the next parcel, next slide, thank you. So this is a graphic that actually clearly calls out, you can see that the library is actually not only just a separate parcel, it has separate zoning of public, quasi-public, and which is perfectly suiting for a library. But for many years, the vineyard parcel, although people look at it like, oh, that's open space, it's actually been zoned central business. And I did want to also address one of the public comments we received that was a general plan image. I think Ms. Cavell had attached to her comment that said, hey, this is actually, open space. It was on the open space map. But what that map really, I had spoken to her before the meeting, what that map was actually trying to show is where are all of our parks and open space resources. And so it is true that that is an agriculture site, but the actual land use designation of what are we supposed to do with this in the future is clearly central business. And yeah, the general plan, those maps, the color schemes are sometimes hard to read. I understand why there could be a little confusion there. Next slide, please. And then other things that have come up as we weigh all of our options, we know that we still need to find a place for a permanent home for a city hall. And then when we do ultimately develop the Railroad Avenue site, where do we relocate Parks and Recreation? So these are just all moving pieces we should consider. Next slide. And this is highlights from the staff report, but just wanted to clearly lay out if we were to continue forward with a proposal for someone to buy 1480 Main Street. The pros of that is that, well, that's the fastest process clearly because we have finished the SLA process. It will be the quickest revenue generator because of that. We're looking at possibly $15 million from that sale. And then the TOT generation is estimated to be about $2 million a year. It would take about 3 to 4 years to get into the revenue generation because, of course, we'd have to go through exclusive negotiating agreement, entitlements, CEQA. So that's where a lot of that time frame comes from. But again, more benefits of more foot traffic activation on that northern end of downtown. And then in tandem with the sale of that property, it would also involve the housing development for workforce housing on Railroad Avenue. Next slide. So on the negative side, the cons would be there has been a lot of public comment about potential negative impacts of having a large development right next to Lyman Park and a potential concern of like a barrier that would block views and use of the park. And also once developed, there's no opportunity for future reconfiguration and use. And then also the current proposals we've been looking at are similar to other hotels in town currently. Next slide. So if we were to sell Adams Street, the pros of that, clearly, just because of the size of it, it's an incredible piece of land, has incredible views, so it's going to command a much higher price at probably, we're looking at $22 to $30 million, and then $4 million a year in TOT. And of course, because of that very large location with plenty of space to spread out, that's going to be more attractive to a developer that would want to build a 5-star resort. And it also would provide much greater ongoing revenue for the city. There's also potential for complementary civic amenities at this location, and also potential funding for a cultural center, a city hall, a new library, and parks and recreation offices. And this also is a housing element site. There's a carve out in the housing element for 1.3 acres of it, which still leaves a lot of land development potential. Next slide. So the downsides of selling it would be, of course, a longer lead time to realize that revenue, and we would have to go through the SLA process. Concerns of losing this asset that everybody just loves looking at the vineyards and walking the walking trails, and that aesthetic open space that goes along with it. So, and the staff report does cover this, but we just did want to emphasize that whichever way the council pivots on this is, whether it's clearly let's go, follow through and the SLA process with Adams, we would still have the Railroad Avenue site be part of that, the terms of that deal, and vice versa. If it's 1480 Main, those two just get packaged together. Next slide. So our key decision point tonight is, does the City Council want to move forward with declaring Adams Street as surplus? And if yes, does the council want to declare the entire parcel surplus, or just a portion with or without the library parcel? And as you had seen from the prior graphic, I mentioned that the library has a different zoning. Not that that would prevent the council from directing us to include it, but it is squarely just looked at differently in the general plan currently. Next slide. If we were to pursue the SLA process for Adams, the timeline would look like we have the notice of availability letters actually ready to go out this week, as early as tomorrow. So we're required by law to follow that process, which is our consultant that's assisting us with this, we have to give those developers 60 days to respond. So that would bring us into approximately January 20th of next year. And then we would enter into a 90-day negotiation period, assuming we got any responses that we wanted to seriously consider. And then 30 days after the close of that, we'd either be in the process of negotiating still with somebody, or we would probably have receipt from HCD that we give them all evidence of that we followed their process, and that they would allow us to declare the property as surplus. Next slide. And then the important part on the dollar side is discussing what are the potential revenue of if the site is not purchased from an affordable housing developer. The timing is looking like TOT at the earliest in 2030. And some of the steps, as I had mentioned with the other Main Street site that would be required, would be the HCD issues the approval, and then we go through an RFP process. We would be negotiating an exclusive negotiation agreement. There's also a purchase and sale agreement that goes with that. And then, of course, the CEQA and whatever necessary planning entitlements are necessary before they can get building permits and then construct the project, of course. So, next slide. So if the council does decide to go that direction, there's the recommended action for you with declaring Adams surplus. Next slide, please. But that wraps up my presentation, and I am available for any questions, and I know Mr. Camello is as well, and our city attorney is as well. Thank you.
Anything else to add, Mr. Walsh, at this point? I do have a couple of questions, but if you had anything else to add to the staff report, that would be helpful.
Nothing to add until there's questions.
All right. Honestly, I'm a little surprised by the recitation of the decision points. And I could have lost this in my reading of the staff report. I didn't understand one of the decision points being whether the library parcel would be included or not. I didn't see that anywhere. Maybe I missed that. And then the more nuanced question, I don't think it was fleshed out very well, maybe in the staff report. Again, I could have maybe missed this nuance, but the decision point on whether it would be the entire parcel versus a smaller part of the parcel. And maybe you can talk to that part of it first, and then we can talk about the library parcel. I didn't even think that was on the table tonight, and that's what I've been telling people in the community. So and maybe it isn't. Maybe that's a council decision. But let's talk about just some clarification on what authority we have and how do you go about sort of that nuance. Oh, well, this part of it, but this part is, I don't think our community is ready for 5.6 acres of housing. I don't think that's the intent of anybody, but how do these things typically happen during the SLA process where you can flesh it out and go, okay, it depends on the proposal and what should we be thinking about on that with respect to our legal authority, then we can talk about the policy matter.
Right. So what's before you tonight is just to declare the parcel excluding the library parcel as surplus. If you wanted to say we want to separate this out somehow and have something smaller, I think staff wanted to offer that as a potential compromise if we were to do that, because that's similar to what we did on the Main Street property. But if that were the direction, I think we'd have to go back and actually delineate that. Okay. I don't think we have that sufficiently, but I think staff wanted to offer that as an option. And in the same respect, if you were to expand and also declare the library surplus, you have the ability to do that, but I think that we would probably come back if that were the case. I think they just wanted to open that up to you. Right. In terms of what it looks like when you go through this process, if you declare the entire property surplus, then you have this process where you solicit offers. If someone were to offer on a portion of the property, you could still negotiate with them and potentially, carve something out as part of that process.
Yeah, I understood that.
You have that flexibility.
I know this language in the staff report, probably ease of use, but it talks about purchase, sale, that kind of language. Doesn't prevent potential proposals for leases, long-term leases, those kinds of things, correct, Mr. Walsh?
A lease of greater than 15 years is considered a disposal under the Surplus Lands Act. So you have to go through this process even if you're going to enter into a long-term lease. Mm-hmm. It's only short-term leases that you can do without going through this process.
Okay. If we were to declare the land as surplus, what are the next steps in terms of how the council and the community weighs into the kind of proposal we would be seeking? How much discretion do we have in that process to sort of carve it in a way that tries to meet as many expectations as possible? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. Just the two parts you mentioned with respect to the portion of it for housing, those kinds of things. Where does the city council get a chance to weigh in on that, or the community for that matter? That's sort of
right.
I'm curious about that because I would want that to come back so we can sort of review that before it goes out.
No, that's a great question. So this first step is kind of it's a statutorily required step. So what you do is if you were to declare it surplus tonight, then staff would go out and they would issue what's called a notice of availability, and that's a form document, and you send it out to a list of housing providers that have given their names to HCD, and so it goes to people all over the state, like several hundred organizations and agencies that are involved in housing, and then you wait 60 days to see if you get any responses. If you do get a response, then you have to negotiate with that team in good faith for at least 90 days. And then, and this kind of presupposes the fact that or the belief that you want to sell the property, right? And so, but it doesn't require you to sell at any discount or anything like that. So
Could it not presuppose that you want to lease the property? Even though that, I understand the 15-year requirement, but
right.
Could the council ultimately say, no, we want to invite both?
You could,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Just want to be clear about that.
And so, but this is only for housing at this point.
Understood.
And then when that 90-day period comes to an end, if the council does not come to terms with a housing provider to sell the property for housing, then you're really back at square one, and HCD will say, okay, you have complied with this process, and then you can really sell it at your discretion. You have, and you don't have to sell it at that point. It's you're kind of starting anew without the requirement that you look at housing. And that's what Mr. Camelo was talking about, where what you typically see with agencies is they'll go out for a request for qualifications or a request for proposals. That's something that is discussed at the council level, and usually with an expectation that you would sell it with some specific constraints on it, right? Say, with a commitment that they were going to use it for a specific purpose. That whole process, before you even made a decision on that, it would go through CEQA, it would go through all the kind of public process that gets you to that point. So it's really, you have to get through this first procedural step with
Okay.
and then you go on to something more detailed.
All right. I think it's important that we don't presuppose what the ultimate result will be. We meander sometimes, we pivot from time to time in our community. Hopefully we're all sort of consider what is the common good, how do we meet as many expectations for our community as possible, and as long as there are enough milestones where the city council is involved in trying to control our destiny, our community's destiny to the degree we can, I'd like to see more of that. And so I understand the process. Any other questions, clarifying questions from my colleagues before we open it for public comment? There's been a tremendous amount, thank you, for all the written comment. I didn't count the number, but there are many letters from many people. Thank you for that. Do you have something, Mr. Camelo? I saw you touch the mic. Mr. Camelo.
I just wanted to address the issue of why staff wanted some clarification on the library versus non-library, because
Please.
There's been a lot of conversation about the Adam Street property, and there's been an assumption from some quarters that the whole property would be sold. And I think we want to make sure our default as staff is that we would not be selling, we are not offering the library as part of that, but wanted to make it clear, but wanted to make it public so that there is no assumption that the city was going to sell the library portion as well. And that's why we took great pains to point out that there's even a different designation of the zoning rule.
All right. And I understand that. I just was a little confused by the decision points that were expressed, and I thought, oh, well, that's our decision. I wasn't aware of that decision. I understand that has not been an expressed interest of our council, although the council certainly can change its mind. Questions for Mr. Walsh, Mr. Rosa? Let me open it for public comment. I'll take public comment, knowing that we have received a fair amount of written comment, but everybody has their 4 minutes, or even 4 minutes and 10 seconds, depending on how it is. Mr. Rose, how are you? Nice to see you.
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a personal comment, has nothing to do with any official position that I may have with any of the city's boards or committees. The staff report, I'm going to quote one paragraph from this, and it says, staff has determined that there is no further governmental use for the Adams Street site and is recommending that the City Council declare the site as surplus land and complete the surplus property disposition process in accordance with the SLA. Then we have a proposal, or the presentation, that lists many different ways in which this property could still be used for governmental use. My comment is, based on the definition, I don't see that Adams Street is surplus property. Declaring it as such is a procedural move, as mentioned by our attorney, to allow for a desired result, assuming that it will be more financially beneficial. That's the only reason that it's being looked at, because there are uses that have been presented by the staff for governmental use. This is not a critical emergency time-sensitive issue in terms of the SLA process, because it is actually quite quick by governmental standards, and we're showing it May of 2026. I would think a well-researched and documented analysis of how the property is considered surplus is owed to the public, given the public interest. I'm not for or against selling Adams Street, but a plan, including a list of unintended consequences, need to be in place. This can be done once someone can show that the property is actually surplus. The definition offered in the staff report is not a definition, it's an opinion, and an opinion that is subject to critique. The staff stating that there is no further government use for the Adams Street site does not make it so. Excuse me. The main arguments in the staff report focus mainly on revenue shortfall. The city has in the past complained about not having adequate public space, but the monetary allure is just too great to ignore. This property bounces from proposal to proposal without ever trying to put all of the pieces together. Each proposal always seems to be on the extremes of a solution, and this has been around for a long time, as Mr. Camello has said. We might as well take a little more time and make it quality time to think this through. And if you would, tell me again why this is really surplus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Hello there. Mark Smithers, Vallejo Street.
Welcome, Mr. Smithers.
Thanks. Gary stole part of my thunder, but I'll probably end up repeating that. You've received a couple different analyses and requests and observations and whatnot from me over the last month or so, but there's three issues I do want to speak to, and I'll just sort of ramble on here. It's been suggested by at least one council member that we need to we need this information informed by the SLA process sooner rather than later, because it will help us inform our decision on pretty much regarding a tax initiative in November. I'm not sure how getting involved in the SLA process at this juncture is going to help us along there, because, I mean, if it goes to a housing developer, there's still going to be a long tail on that before we get to a conclusion as to what the price is and what actually comes out of it and what revenues there are. If it's a hotel, I mean, I think it was in the report that it's going to be 2030 before we'd get any revenue. So the idea of this, you know, we got to hurry up along this so that we can decide how this impacts our tax, you know, initiative idea. I'm not following that. So again, I go back to things I've said in other letters. The staff report concludes that there is no further business use for the Adams Street site and therefore can be declared surplus. But these findings aren't supported or discussed in the staff report. The finding is inconsistent with our housing element, which we just completed less than a couple of years ago, I think, on page 2-187, whereby 1.3 acres are designated for housing and stated the remainder for other public and commercial uses, such as potential locations for City Hall and the police station. So, I mean, that's right in our housing element, that we're saying we have public needs and uses for it. Our general plan is littered with references to the need for open space, public spaces, parks, future civic improvement needs. The finding is also inconsistent with the great majority of public opinion through workshops and votes that we had. We had a vote, and only because of somebody said that hotel was not specific enough, so it wasn't a binding vote. Committees, etc. So there's issues, but there's one more issue, and it's actually a big risk, and it may be a trap. If we start this SLA process And depending on, right now, I guess, in the staff report, it says there's a $17 or $18 million appraisal, but in some other parts, we're saying it's worth $22 to $30 million. You go through the appraisal process. When you start the negotiations with somebody that has answered the notice of availability. And given the real estate market, that appraisal is a couple years old, I think. Given where the real estate market is at this point in time and comparable properties that sold that are of comparable size, you may not even get 17 million as an appraisal. What if you get 12 million as an appraisal? And then all of a sudden you've now sold the whole 5.6 acres to a developer that's going to give you your affordable housing, but you're actually going to have a residential and commercial village with all sorts of retail and commercial on the bottom and 100 houses on top. So this is a real risk that you maybe want to consider before you start down the SLA process.
Sorry, thank you.
Kelly Wheaton, Inglewood Avenue. My question, I echo Gary's remarks about the usage of the larger piece of the property, but I want to speak specifically about the library. It is my reading, and maybe Mr. Walsh can weigh in on it, that the SLA does not allow you to declare a currently used property that's being used by the government as surplus. And I believe that the library is still in use, and so if nothing else, I urge you to carve that out and make that separate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wheaton.
Hi, I'm Michael Haley. I live on Spring Mountain Road.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Michael.
I wrote a long letter. I didn't realize it was long until I saw the other comment letters, so I already talked quite a bit. So I'll try to be brief here. I mean, my main concern, you're losing your town. People, you're losing your town. Half the residents have left. I do not want another hotel. I hope that it's the absolute, I mean, we should be desperate with our backs against the wall if we build another hotel here. And this is a process that could lead to that. So those are the thoughts that came up for me. My wife's from Yountville area. We lived just south of Yountville for a long time, and we lived there and we watched the whole process that Yountville went through to where it just lost its community. I remember when Bouchon Bakery came in, and I used to drive down there every morning to get a cup of coffee and a scone before I started work, and it was great, you know, because nobody was there the first year. And then after about a year, the line was so long that I would have had to wait 20, 30 minutes just to get a cup of coffee. And so I stopped going. It just wasn't practical. That's what happens in tourist towns. Look, people need to research what happened. We had a big discussion. Some of you saw it, perhaps. I know some of you did, on Next Door Neighborhood this week. And I was really surprised to discover that people do not understand the impact that tourism has on towns. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. It's worldwide. You know, I start researching it, and the algorithm starts sending me articles, right? And you get a million things, you know. And one article that I went through, 9 old mining towns in Colorado have been converted to high-end tourism. Aspen is about the same size as St. Helena. All the locals have moved out of Aspen. Every single one of them. They went in and surveyed the residents. The biggest concern that in all 9 towns is we've lost our community. You lose your schools. Napa's going through a process of losing its schools because the families move out, they can't afford it. Hotels don't pay enough to live here. So all of a sudden you have all these workers who have to commute in. Every new job is a new commuter in this county, and it's a real problem. And it's not that I'm asking, you know, to tear down the hotels or anything like that, but we've got to figure out another way to make money, or we're going to lose this town. Yountville, I mean, you should drive through there sometimes. There's nobody there, you know. The whole town, as far as locals went, died. And the neighborhoods are empty. No, certainly no kids, no people. You know, St. Helena right now, Chuck Shinneman is a guy who's been there a long time, 30 years at least, working on housing issues. Maybe some of you know him. And I met with him recently, and then I found an article that he was quoted in talking about what happens to the community. He said it's even worse in Yountville and St. Helena. He's brought this to the attention of local leaders. He cited a housing study commissioned by Napa County supervisors, and in those two cities, it's about 50% second homes. Do we want to lose another down to 10%? I mean, we've got to figure out a way to make a diversion. And if everybody on next door neighbors said the problem is money, the city doesn't have the money, we got a deficit. Let's pass a sales tax. As a matter of fact, I volunteer right now to be on the committee to promote a sales tax. Half a cent, I understand from a reliable source that 1 cent sales tax would bring in $4.5 to $5 million a year. That's got to cover the deficits that we have. We've got to consider these alternative directions. Thank you. I spared you 12 seconds.
Well done, Mr. Hayter, thank you. And I've taken your name. All right. Now's the time. Anybody? Ms. Covell.
Hi, everybody. Michelle Covell. I did put forth a public comment today. I hope people take a moment to read it. I really am trying to come to this item with an open mind as best as I can. After listening to several others speak, I have some I'd like to say I support everything Gary Rose and Mark Smithers said and Kelly Wheaton. My question, I hope you guys take a moment to read my document. Regardless of whether or not this green is open space or existing agriculture on this green map, it is open space and people use it as such. As I said in my document, it's of the 3 sites, this is a site that people use, and it's a jewel. And if you look at this map where I circled it, it's the heart of town. So it's really important. I'm gonna go off my document because I hope you read it. From what I've heard tonight is that so far, the water neutrality policy has not been an urgent item. The financial analysis and evaluation of our current financial status, that's coming later this year or next year. That hasn't been as urgent as, for some reason, putting this on the SLA. So I don't know if that makes sense to make the decision of putting this on an SLA without having the financial report back yet. I also, with all this development going on, the water neutrality policy is really important as a topic. And I don't think, honestly, next year, mid-next year, does any justice to our town, given that this is a way for our town to reap some in lieu fees from all the development that is going to be happening. I want to say some of the things that other people have talked about is that if this SLA, if it's put on SLA and there is no conditions that we can put on it, if there are no conditions, then if we sell it and they can do whatever they want to do it with it, then we have no control over the heart of the town. And so if that's not really clear, I'd like to make sure it's clear. Like if for some reason this goes forward, I don't know why, I'm trying to keep an open mind. If it does go forward and there are good things that come out of it, the conditions and what it goes for the community is the most important thing. As many people have said about hotels, we do have a lot of hotels here, and we have a lot, but they are empty or not as full as they could be. And I think if we did more things with our town to promote community, families, bringing families, not just for wine tasting, because that industry right now is taking a downturn, but like we want to bring families. We want to bring more people in this town. We have to be diverse in our amenities. And then on top of that, in my document, we are facing a lot of new housing coming in, and a lot of these new people that would be moving here and using this town would need more open space and amenities. So I guess my question is, why is this so urgent and the financial report and the water neutrality policy is not as important? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I was about to close public comment, so anyone else wishing to say their piece, now is the time. Welcome. How are you?
Good. My name is Tim Hall. I live
Tim.
on Pratt Avenue. This is the first time speaking before the city council. I have several points to make on Adams. First, I completely agree with Gary that this does not meet the definition of surplus property. It seems to be merely for financial purposes of the government, and that is to eliminate the deficit, fund the pensions, and fund infrastructure and other items in the city, and that's not a government use of property. I think you're rushing this decision. There's a lot of other financial information that you need to have before you to make a informed decision. You need recommendations from the Finance Committee. You need to look at other tax opportunities, whether it's a sales tax increase, as previously mentioned. You've got new property taxes coming in from Spring Grove and Hunter. You've got a annexation proposal in front of the county for Meadowwood and potentially other strips along Highway 29 that could bring in not only transit occupancy tax, but also property taxes. There's just a lot of financial information that you don't have in front of you to decide whether you actually need this money from a sale of Adams Street. If you need inputs, which I know some of you do, as to how it could be used and what the revenue potential is, you can certainly put out RFPs. You've received proposals from Oliver Caldwell. I've seen 3 different proposals for how the property could be structured. You could ask developers. I'm sure they would be very anxious to give you some ideas as to how they would like to develop the property. And that could all be done outside of the surplus process. So I wish you would slow down on this. You can get the information that you want on the revenue from this in other ways than getting it from a surplus designation, and you need to wait to get all the other financial details in front of you before you make a decision. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and council members, city manager, and esteemed staff. Ingratiate me, I'm going to read a letter to keep me on track. So, St. Helena faces significant fiscal challenges that can no longer be postponed. Inflation, the cost of operating a fully paid fire department, ongoing pension obligations, and long-deferred capital improvements all place increasing pressure on our budget. For years, the city has commissioned studies, hired consultants, and convened citizens' committees to analyze these issues, yet the results have largely been delay, rising liabilities, and no durable solutions. The evidence is now unmistakable. Our current revenue structure is insufficient to sustain the quality of life and level of services our community expects. Continuing to wait for another committee recommendation, consultant report, or incremental service reduction will will not resolve the underlying problems. At best, these approaches only offer temporary or marginal relief, while the core financial challenges continue to grow. We must acknowledge the broader context. Years ago, before the pandemic, wildfires, inflation, and shifting economic and political realities, few residents viewed the Adams Street parcel as an essential part of our long-term fiscal strategy. The community simply did not foresee the level of financial strain we now face. Today, however, circumstances have changed dramatically, and our approach must change with them. Part of the current predicament stems from a well-intentioned but ultimately costly desire to preserve political harmony. By avoiding hard choices and an effort not to agitate any particular group of citizens, we have repeatedly deferred major decisions and failed to implement a cohesive vision. As a result, we resemble a boat without a rudder, adrift, while a small but vocal minority resists the very act of installing a rudder until every resident agrees on the exact course, which then becomes the subject of renewed debate. This cycle leaves us stagnant while our financial challenges grow more urgent. Given these realities, we must consider all viable assets in crafting a sustainable solution. The Adams Street parcel, one of the city's most significant underdeveloped properties, needs to be factored in any serious plan to address our structural revenue needs. Its thoughtful development represents a rare opportunity to strengthen the city's financial foundation and preserve the essential services that define St. Helena's quality of life. In practical terms, this means moving forward with the SLA process for the Adams Street parcel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Haley. I didn't prepare a speech or anything, but after hearing all the discussion from the mayor and the council and the public, I would like to see a postponement in doing the Adams Street as a what you're promoting it to become. And I think we need another 6 months. I think we need more input from everybody. We need to have the council work on what some of the public has suggested, so that the whole town and you can make a really good decision for our future. You know, what I see happening so often is that people, especially in the business, they look at a town of what they can get from it. But what does it really give back to the town and as the heart of a community? You really have to look at that. We do things, not just St. Helena, but we've held ourselves back. And I'm new to St. Helena. I was born in Napa, but I'm new to St. Helena, and I do love it dearly. And I just hate to see St. Helena end up looking and acting like every other town. Who wants to cop? We need to be original in our decisions and the reasons why. And we just don't want to be like a copycat and do things the same way. Let's just take some more time. Give us 6 months at least. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some speakers waiting in the back, angling to get forward, and we have Mr. Belt, who's closest to the mic. So, Mr. Belt, you get the mic.
Tom Belt. I didn't come prepared tonight to speak about this subject, but after hearing what people have been saying, aside from Mr. Caldwell, with all respect, we need more time on this. This has been going on for a long, long time. If you'll read my letter tonight, you'll see that basically, step after step after step, the people have said no to this. The majority of people have. And when Measure G was brought up, it's still lost by 2%. It's getting closer. I realize that. I'm of the opinion that we do not have all the information on the real solid truth of our financial situation in the city. I think our finance department is working on that. Our committee is working on that with the city. And we don't have the efficiency study done completely yet. There's a lot of information yet we still need to know, and as Mr. Caldwell said, we have other options. This isn't the only option we have to raise more money. The sales tax was brought up. We talked about in lieu fees raising. I just would really like others have said before, let's postpone this decision until we have more information about everything we need to know before putting this property on the SLA list. And I would thank you very much for your consideration on that.
Thank you, Mr. Belt. Mr. Covell, how are you?
Charles Covell, Park Street. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Try to keep it brief. I didn't expect to speak about this either tonight, but I am also in agreement with many of the opinions I'm hearing about urging postponement of this decision with more deliberation and more exploration of the ways that we can maintain control of the parcel while still potentially developing it in ways that are consistent with the general plan and with the findings of the Finance Committee when they come in. We've had several of the Finance Committee members stand up and speak to you here. So I agree with a lot of these opinions that this seemed very rushed, and I think everybody is kind of wondering why this is all of a sudden taking precedence over things such as the water neutrality or some of these other urgent items that are not very glamorous, but they are really critical to our decision making in the town. So I would also urge exploring other ways, including one I saw from Mr. Park, his letter, public comments today about possibly leasing and whether that is a long-term lease of the property might be a way for the community to maintain its control of the parcel rather than selling it forever. I remember that, recall that we sold our water rights when the pipeline was installed back to Napa. One-time amount of money that's now gone forever, and now we're having to buy our water from Napa. So I urge the city council members to delay any action on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson is approaching the mic. How you doing, Mary?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Mary Stevenson, I'm speaking as an individual, and I had something I wanted to say, but I have a comment first, and that is when the city puts out a surplus property request to affordable housing agencies, there is no nonprofit affordable housing agency that will pay market rate for a piece of property. That's disingenuous at best and could be a lot worse. So number one, to think that putting the railroad site, the city hall site, or this site out for affordable housing at market rate is a non-starter. And what I wanted to say is bringing more hotels to St. Helena will increase TOT in the long run, but it won't curb the loss of working families. Most incremental houses will be of the service level where housing is expensive to build and maintain, so the majority of them will commute to work. So although you will eventually get your TOT in 2030, you will also add significantly to our current housing and traffic challenges. Meanwhile, we have 50% of our housing inventory sitting vacant right now as second homes. Between the Hunter and the Spring Grove project, there are 84 new market rate homes that are projected to sell in today's dollars at $1.5 to $2.5 million. And those will come on board in the next 2 to 6 years. There are very few businesses in St. Helena that will employ people who can afford those kind of houses. So most of them will become second homes, which furthers hollow out our town. As I see it, between our lack of a housing strategy, the residential development that we've allowed, and the hotels that we're trying to build, we are letting developers create the town that we're going to have in the future because we don't have a set plan. I suggest that the city should not look at the sale of any particular property in isolation. There needs to be an overarching plan on how all kinds of real estate development, how tourism and tax revenue, the wine industry, loss of population, increasing vacation residents, as well as infrastructure plans, revenue streams, and environmental concerns work together. If we don't have that plan, we're doing whack-a-mole, and that's what we've been doing for quite a while. We all cherish the small-town character that we have, and that's probably one of the few things that we all agree upon. But I think we're losing more of our authenticity every year, where we jump from one project to another without this overarching strategy. And I know it's hard to think long-term when we have one fire after another to put out, pun intended, when politicians and staff transition regularly, and when there are many loud voices coming in from all sides. But now's the time to step back and figure out what is our end game. What do we want to be in 10 years? What do we want to be in 15 years? And then do planning that gets us there, revenue-wise, business-wise, and housing-wise. I think we owe that to our children and to our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Goldfarb, just off Vallejo Street, not quite on the same street as Mr. Smithers. I think it's time for action. This community as a whole keeps deferring everything. What you're embarking on now is just step one. Mary is right. There's no affordable housing that can get built on this property as part of that first 90 days. Because, quite frankly, you can't afford to pay the real estate price that will be put onto this property. What that means is this property would then become available to the city to negotiate an appropriate deal to put the uses that you want to see in this community. It's one of the rare sites that we have left. If it turns out to be partially a housing site and partially a first-class hotel because it's a big piece of property, that may be the best answer. But the worst answer is to say, let's just sit back and think about this longer, because that's all we do in this community. We need to move forward. There's an opportunity here that is a rare one. Okay, most communities don't have a piece of property this size. But ultimately, if you say you want to preserve this community, one way you preserve it is get other people that work in this community to be able to live in this community. Without that, it's sort of a false community. Okay? There's no reason to wait. Please, move forward tonight and let's declare this surplus property and then get the right project approved in the long run here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfarb. I usually pull the trigger a lot earlier, but I'm waiting. All right. Yeah. I've never had to use that in my term. I'm very proud of that, by the way. I've never had to use that, and every time I see it right in front of me, I move it away. Because what a respectful great group of comments. I'm pleased with that, and our community should be pleased with it also. All right. I'll close public comment and bring it back to the city council for deliberation, discussion, direction to our staff. Who of my esteemed colleagues would like to get us started? A lot to say, a lot to talk about, maybe some more questions for staff, given some of the comments that have been made. Happy to entertain any and all. All right, let me ask a few questions. That'll get the juices flowing. There is an important issue that is raised, and I'm not entirely clear about it, but the sort of the notion of what surplus means. Is that a legal question? Is that a policy question? Is it a little bit of both? It may take time to delve into that a little deeper under the circumstances that we have laid out here, but what say you, Mr. Walsh, on that question?
Sure. So I'll answer the question directly, but I also want to offer some context for it, which I think is part of what Mr. Goldfarb was alluding to. So in order to declare it surplus, what you're finding that the land is no longer necessary for public use. So you're not saying that it can't be used for public use or there's not potential public use. You're saying it's no longer necessary for public use. And that's really a policy decision because you're making the decision that you don't need it anymore, so you can sell it, right? And if you're selling it, obviously you don't need it because if you needed it, you wouldn't sell it, right? And so that's the finding you make. And to me, that is a quintessential policy decision that's within the discretion of the council to make. Ms. Wheaton raised a good point as it pertains to the library building.
Yes.
And could you find that that's no longer necessary for public use? I have seen instances where public agencies have a building that is in public use and they say, for example, a parking structure, and they say it's no longer needed. We don't need it because we have enough parking. And so it's no longer necessary for public use. Or we no longer need our city hall building because we have a plan to transition them to a new location. So I think you can still make those findings in that instance. I do think for the library building, if you were going to find that the library building was no longer necessary for public use, you would need to have a plan for that before you made that finding. So I think that's a very good point that you made. And then the context I wanted to give for this decision is that the Surplus Lands Act, the whole intent of that law is to make sure that before cities sell property, they make it available for affordable housing first. That's really the entire purpose of that law. It's not to restrict your ability to sell. It's just to say, if you make the decision that you want to sell your property because you don't need it anymore, the first thing you have to do is offer it for affordable housing. And it's really a one-size-fits-all situation. Anytime you want to sell land, unless it fits into one of the narrow exemptions in the law, then you have to offer it. And in some contexts, that doesn't make a lot of sense because the land is really valuable and you want to sell it for revenue generating purposes. I acknowledge that, but you still have to go through the process and take it seriously. So that's really what we're doing today is we're saying we're willing to entertain selling it. And that's, and so it's by saying we're willing to consider that, we're saying it's no longer necessary for public use. And then secondly, that as the first step in that process, we're going to go through the process of offering it for affordable housing to comply with the law. And then you get to the next steps of, okay, what do we want to do now? Do we want to sell this and for what purpose do we want to sell it? And then you have that community dialogue on that.
All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Merrick, I want you to opine on the question of what is the role of the Finance Committee, because you're our liaison, and I know that these are processes that are moving simultaneously, and, obviously, the SLA process and the need for what we're doing right now has not necessarily been vetted. But there should be a role for the Finance Committee at some point to weigh in on this, and there probably will be, not probably, there will be many other steps along the way to do that. How do you see the role of this? First of all, this is a first step. It's really not, in my mind, the first step is not really, it's a fiscal step. It's more of a housing step, in my view, although that is an economic development action. But how do you see the role of the Finance Committee? I know that hasn't been vetted necessarily, and I'm maybe calling you, out of the blue here, but there is a role for it, right? And more data will evolve as we move through the process, if we decide to go through the process. How do you see that weighing out? How do we address that? Because it's a legitimate concern. I want to make sure that we have enough data, and they're going simultaneously, and they're playing off of one another.
First, I think the Finance Committee hasn't been a part of this process because this was in closed session, right? It wouldn't be appropriate to have the Finance Committee at this point in time because the SLA process, as Ethan, Mr. Walsh, has just articulated, it doesn't commit us to do anything yet. It just gets us to a point where we could potentially do something. So at the point we decide, if we decide, I think the appropriate time then would be to engage with the Finance Committee. Again, that's just my own opinion. Others could have different thoughts, and we'll have different thoughts. So yeah, that's my view.
Okay. I mean, I think we have to acknowledge that maybe we're all coming at it a little differently. We all have our different motivations and thoughts about why we would want to do something like this. Mine is housing. Housing is an economic development tool that we have. Granted, we have very expensive property, and so I don't know why people shake their head on that one, but that's interesting. So others think that, well, it's just we're bypassing that step to get to a hotel. That may very well be for many people. Maybe people have that idea. But the first step is finding some moral ground here. And that to me is making sure that the folks who are working in our restaurants and in our hospitality and taking care of our parents and us have a place to live. And it doesn't have to be grand. It could be very simple housing. And so we don't even know what that would look like. I'm not ready to say no to that without at least knowing what that is. That's where I am right now. All of the other issues in terms of resorts and all these other things, the potentiality there, I don't even know if I'll be around by that time. Who knows? But that's where I'm coming from, and so that's what is intriguing for me, honestly, to at least take that first step to see how creative we can get to meet really what's been set out in our general plan. Folks talk about open space, but the general plan actually talks about it in fairly straightforward language. There's actually a map of the property showing the mixed uses. So it's zoned business. What is the term? Community? Business?
Central business.
Central business, CB, sorry. So it's been that way for some time. And it's sort of the same issue about some of the Spring Street properties. They've been in vineyard for so long, but they're zoned housing, so it's complicated in that way. I'm wanting to take the first step and see what will result. And it may very well be that Mary Stevenson is right. No one's going to make an offer on this. It may very well be. And that would be unfortunate, I think. But it will allow us to respond in appropriate ways. We don't necessarily have to sell, 1.3 acres, whether it's 1 acre. There are different ways of approaching that. We have to say yes to housing where we can. We also have to acknowledge that this is a beautiful property. It has open space. People are attached to it. And why can't we satisfy that need also at the same time? Why are we all suggesting right now that we cannot accomplish a few of these things at the same time? I also acknowledge that other hotels are in the pipeline. And honestly, that will influence my decision down the road. If those hotels are moving a lot quicker, I will be looking at that as part of the decision-making process when we get to that point, if there is that point. Because I do recognize you can get a little overly ambitious with your hotels, but we're not there yet. And so far, nothing's moving. There's some interest, there's some applications. Certainly that we don't want to over-commercialize. And I recognize there is this sense of loss going on right now. I feel the sense of loss in our community. It's changing because of the 50% of our homes, our second homes. There's a lot going on. I'm just wanting to take the first step and see what happens. I'd say, trust me. I don't know. Geez Louise. I don't know where this is going to go until I see something to look at and go, yeah, that's going to work, or no, that will never work in our community. That's kind of where I am right now. Others thinking differently, and I'm sure you all do, and welcome the thoughts now. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I have a lot to say. Ready? So I did want to, I think we respectfully heard by two housing experts that housing is highly unlikely to happen on that property. I'm also struck by the fact, I think that the Surplus Lands Act declaration, or whatever it's called, is kind of a big deal. And I noticed that if we declare this surplus, we will have Main Street, Railroad, and Adams all declared as surplus with no further governmental use. And then we don't have a permanent home for the city hall. So that part is a bit confusing to me. But in the staff report, I think going back to some of the first commenters, staff has determined there's no further governmental use for Adams Street. But it feels like a pretty thin statement to me. I was wondering how the analysis was done, what specific criteria were used to determine that, what other governmental uses were considered, how staff assessed future needs, what unintended consequences there might be, and how far into the future we looked. I would just love to see that on paper, because 3 days for many of us to absorb this feels unnecessarily tight to me, and I'm uncomfortable with it. And then I also want to go ahead and opine on some of the comments that are out in the community that Michael Haley brought up, just because I feel strongly about them and I think it's relevant. And I've heard in the community this conversation that there's no proof that hotels or luxury hotels impact resident and community life. But I wanted to point out that tourism gentrification has been studied since the 1990s, and there are a number of key research findings. To Michael's point, that you can get more. It will take a while to go through those and develop our own research paper, but the key findings are that housing costs rise faster than the local wages or labor market conditions would predict. There are loss of year-round residents. Economic successes can undermine community stability, and school enrollment drops. And then the fifth is that those outcomes are not inevitable, but communities that protect housing for local families, long-term rental stock, meaningful public spaces, and local serving land use can actually combat those. So I just think that this whole decision needs to be extremely thoughtful, and we do need to really think about those meaningful public spaces. And I think there are a lot in the community who feel that Adams Street property is fairly special and fairly sacred. I think it's a bit of a sanctuary for people who don't have a serene vineyard view in their backyard. Having that space around the library is meaningful. To sit out and look out the window at the library or to walk around is a big deal. I'm not anti-hotel at all. I get that the TOT is very valuable. I was excited about Main Street. I'd be excited about Farmstead. B of A had been supportive of the Krug facility. But I think we need to be very thoughtful in this and get the balance right. And it 3 days to absorb this and not have the kind of documentation I would expect feels very uncomfortable to me.
Other council members want to challenge anything or add anything or call me out on anything that I think I've said that's not quite right. But there was one I wanted to make a clarification. Somebody had mentioned that there was a Meadowood, an application to annex Meadowood before the county. I'm not aware of that. There's no such application as far as I know. There's some interest in exploration, but I'm not aware of anything. Correct, Mr. Comello? Okay. I just want to make sure that that's not set in stone. Mr. Barrett.
I think they're my guess is, and I believe it was Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall was referring to the sphere of influence process. Of course, it's not an annexation application, to your point.
Right. All right. Other comments on some of the statements? A lot of good dialogue here. Some need more time. Honestly, I think that's a perspective. I'll give you mine. I'm finishing my 11th year on the council, and this item has come up every couple years, honestly. There actually was a housing proposal back in the day. Okay, Mark, I know, you know. We do. Well, you know, there was a housing proposal that got rejected by the council back before my time. You know, it was difficult to go through that, obviously. But we're in different times now. There's no question about it. I guess the only point I would make is, you know, others may have a different point of view, but it's not simply a financial issue for me. I don't know how else to say that more, you know, straightforward. I really don't. And I actually am intrigued by combining Railroad and a portion of Adams Street for housing and seeing how that will play out. I'm just really anxious to see some creative proposals that will allow our community to move forward and be proud of itself. That's kind of where I am. Mr. Barrett.
So my perspective on this is that this is the first step in a process to do anything. And that includes some of the public comments for leasing, I think for Mr. Park. You can't lease the property. You can't do anything with the property without going through the SLA process now. It's a relatively new law. It doesn't mean we have to do anything. The public comment process would continue if we did decide to do it. I know that's a big concern. I think ultimately the issue here is there's fear of what we're going to do from the community. There's fear that the council as a body and staff has a predetermined outcome, or that we lack the collective judgment to make the right decisions and have the proper road of inquiry. And I understand that. There's been a lot of issues, real and perceived, for the last decade, probably more than that. And so that's an understandable viewpoint. However, from my perspective as a governing body, we can acknowledge that, but there's really not much we can do to solve that trust issue in regards to this piece. We can acknowledge it, and I hope that that's not the case. I know everybody here, at least in my year here, that people are thoughtful. There are no predetermined outcomes. I've seen that myself internally. I mean, one big example is the hotel on Main that we paused, we did not kill, and the deliberation was to pause it because we wanted to balance that. We've heard from some people, hey, we have to look at all the properties. I don't disagree with that at all. It's paused to take a look at this parcel and then in context. There's no rush to judgment. There are residents, Oliver is in the audience, who have a vision and have a plan, and they have a right to persecute that. That does not necessarily mean we're in a binary situation here. It is not a 0 or 1 issue. There's lots of layers here. My colleagues won't go into, they can speak for themselves, but I've heard varying degrees of potential use here. Housing has been central in that theme. Personally, I'm looking to see if there's a multi-use piece where You can get an amphitheater. There's lots of good ideas that community members have come up with. We owe it to ourselves to explore those possibilities. Insofar as the sequencing and timeline of events, I don't think this is being rushed at all. And in context, from making decisions about finance, I believe there were some comments on that. Yes, the sequencing is tight. The SLA process could elongate and only hit in May, come out in May at the long end, if there is a affordable housing proposal on this property. If there isn't, that timeline goes down by 90 days, I believe. Could be wrong, but that's what I believe. Correct me, please, Ethan, if that is incorrect.
It's 60 days for proposals. If you get none, you're done.
And so
if
there
you
would
get
be no 90-day.
If you get any proposals, you have to negotiate in good faith for 90
So
days.
yes, nothing's certain. We don't know until we do it. And at least my commitment is we're going to follow the data. We're going to follow what comes next in the process after. It could be, Mary's absolutely right, we don't get housing. In fact, my head tends to go there from a practical standpoint in the initial proposal. However, we could have multi-use applications that will be able to get more housing. And I think it's very right that hotels, we all live here, somebody has to will you a home, it seems like, to get here anymore. It's super unaffordable. The whole conversation of affordable housing, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I wouldn't call any of the houses we've been talking about affordable to the average person. So what I'm focused on is workforce housing. And the institutions need to pay for that workforce housing because it's in their best interest. If the numbers pan out, if they don't, we'll see that too. And like Maine, proposals come in, you'll look at them and you'll evaluate them for what they are and make decisions, just like we did and paused the hotel on Maine. There was no predetermined outcomes there. That vote shifted over the period I was involved. There is no predetermined outcomes, and that's my viewpoint here. I know it's contentious. I know it's wrong to ask for trust per se because of the history, and I don't take it personally. It's a body situation. We're all in it, and I think we move forward, and we try to move forward with integrity, and we do what we say we're going to do, and I think we'll be held accountable by the community if we don't. That doesn't mean, as the data comes in, X won't happen or Y will happen. That's not a commitment I'm making. What I am making is that we haven't decided on one of those binary solutions at this time. At least I have not. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Others? I'm sorry, yes, I was, yep. Others, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I am definitely sharing the same kind of sentiments as Mr. Mayor and Mr. Barrick. I'm in favor of this idea solely in learning what the possibilities are. Again, we are pausing the idea of Main Street to make sure that we are looking at all options. I don't want to wind up in a situation where we wish we had. This doesn't mean we're definitely doing one thing or another thing. It's just saying, let's give ourselves the options to be able to see what we can do. And I think for us as a town, we need to obviously be thinking about that too. I think there are different things, different options for that parcel. I don't think it needs to be one thing or another thing. I look forward to having the public being able to weigh in on, options that we can do, post moving forward with this.
Thank you, Ms. Spadaro. Ms. Summers, what say you? Anything intrigue you?
It's mostly been said, by the collective here. And, the SLA is a new thing, and that was spawned by the lack of affordable housing in California. So it's the state trying, yet it is just shotgun, napalm, one size fits all that doesn't fit everybody. And so we're dealing with it as everybody's, every city is. And it's not a commitment to do the wrong thing. It's a commitment to explore, to find the best action we can take as a community. And in order to do that, this is what we got to do. The cool part is that we didn't commit to Main Street. We haven't committed to Adams, but we have them both in data collection mode. And I think we should have something at the Cameo like we have before, communicate, get the communication going, and make a decision together. Because the best decisions are more unanimous than not.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Summers. Mr. Barrett, the conversation continues, and now I'm going to take a...
Yeah, I'd like to also add that the concerns that we all have about kind of feeling the town ebb away, sort of, we're running to stand still in some regards, second homes. These are macroeconomic concerns that are affecting the entire valley, not just St. Helena. And everybody knows that. I'm not making history by saying that. The fact is that from 2019, we've been bleeding out residents, almost 1,000 residents. Tourism, the idea that tourism...
What was the word that you used?
Bleeding.
Bleeding, okay.
Bleeding
We've
out.
lost 1,000
Sorry,
residents.
military
Okay.
term. We've lost them. And that trend's not good for schools. School enrollment's down, even the Montessori, et cetera. These trends are kind of the mathematics of defeat in some ways, that your demographics are destiny. We need to shape that where we can, but we have to be realistic about what we can and can't do as a municipal body. We're one part of the whole from a government perspective. So we need to be realistic there and realize that standing still isn't preventing that ebbing. We're witnessing it in slow motion. So that future that we're fearing, we fear it because we can feel it every day in the ground. If you have kids going to school, the class sizes. So I don't look at that as a binary decision either, that tourism 0 or no tourism 1. People depend on the tourism for their livelihood. It's just where we're at in Napa Valley. It's no different here. I'm open to exploring other potential options to diversify, but we also need to be realistic about exploring options and having them become real. So I think those demographics, I think, are important to recognize too in the discussion. Thank you.
All right, we're getting to that point. Anyone else have anything to say? I'm going to invite a motion. That's what I'm getting to. Ms. Lou Covell has a question. You don't have a comment, you have a question? Come to the mic for the question. As long as the question is relatively brief, because we're right in the middle of this.
Yes, it is very brief.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the deliberation today. My question is, once you put it on SLA and say you don't like any of the proposals, can you remove it from the SLA if nothing comes forth? Because I respect all of you up there.
That's enough. I think we got the question.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
just saying if it turns, you guys
Okay,
have
we'll answer
different
that
city
question.
council, then what happens then? You know what I mean?
Good question, of course. Mr. Walsh?
Could you
It depends.
Could you later say we? So
You have to go through the process.
I guess you could make some finding that where you said this is no longer surplus land and we believe it's available for a public use. All that would really mean is that a future council would have to go through the same process. As it stands, if you complete the SLA process, you don't have to sell the land. You completed that process. At least that's the way the law reads right now. If you were to later declare, we do have a public purpose and we want to remove it from our surplus lands list, you could do that. It just means that a future council, if they wanted to declare a surplus in the future, they'd have to go through the process again.
Yep, all right. Yeah, we still have time for deliberation. I'm not going to cut anyone off. Just trying to move it along.
Is there any risk that that could change? We know that HCD rules are changing pretty quickly. Is that something we should be concerned about?
So I don't think they would change the law to prevent you from doing that, because that would mean you'd have to go through the process again. I do think there's a risk that the legislature in the future will say, if you don't sell the land within X period of time, you have to go through the process again if you hold on to the land. But that just means you have to again offer it up before you were to sell it. That's total speculation, but they have been tightening these laws.
That's kind of my concern, that they're tightening these laws, and so this declaration that we don't need it is a big deal. I'm a little worried about us getting caught up in rapidly changing laws with a legal finding that we don't need this property.
All right. Looking for a motion.
I will make a motion to adopt the SLA for Adams. Is that the staff is it a staff recommendation?
I didn't realize that Mr. Summers has left the room. That kind of
We're
just
silly.
left the room.
Could be a book.
Is there a second?
Was that with or without the library?
Oh, thank you, council member. Without.
All right.
I'll second the motion.
For the benefit of Mr. Summers, I think it would be prudent to restate the motion, Mr. Barrick, and this.
Sure. Making a motion to move forward with the SLA for Adams minus the library parcel.
All right. And there was a second by Ms. Bonaroto. We'll have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick.
Yes.
Councilmember Spoterato.
Yes.
Councilmember Summers.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy.
No.
Mayor Doring.
Yes. All right, that motion passes. Let's take a 10-minute break. We can get our bearings again and do what we need to do, our biological breaks, which I need. Okay, we're going to reconvene. Thank you. Looks like we're on, Mr. Clerk, we're on to item 12.1 under new business, correct? All right. Mr. Camello, you want to introduce the item and the staff, please? Staff member.
There's Mr. Joe Leach.
Well done, Mr. Camello. You're smooth as can be. Mr. Leach, I know it's your item.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Just the item before you is action regarding a engagement with the State Water Resources Control Board as a result of the wastewater treatment plant exceeding allowable maximum contaminant level for a number of constituents. The staff report delineates both the result of negotiations with the water board staff. The plant exceeded 129 times the samples and the sampling requirements. 126 of those are eligible for the minimum penalty of $3,000 per incident. So the total comes out to $378,000. And the water board does afford operators of wastewater treatment facilities to take a portion of those fines towards a project that has an environmental benefit. Fortunately for us, the board staff was open to a project that directly benefited our collection system. And so it's taking some pipes that are susceptible for leaking within the 300-foot area adjacent to Sulphur Creek. The locations are delineated on the plan. So it'd be on Crane Avenue and on Spring Street, where we'd rehab around 600 feet of pipe, either lining it or some type of rehabilitation process that has yet to be determined. So a portion of the fine can be put towards the project, and then a portion of the fine is delineated in the staff report, gets paid towards the water board. And with that, I would field any questions you might have.
I think it would be helpful for our community to get a little bit better understanding of what the issue is, what the problem is with I&I, and how that overwhelms our system and why we have these exceedances, so many of them, just the common sense layperson's explanations for our community and us.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that prompting. So the wastewater treatment plant normally processes at about 500,000 gallons a day. That's its average dry weather flow. During the rainy season, because of high groundwater, because of defects in pipes, the sewer collection pipes, we end up processing 5 million gallons a day that comes into the facility. So that's 10 times the amount of water that comes into the facility. That water has to go somewhere. And so we have storage ponds that kind of take the peak flow so that it can go through our new membrane bioreactor. But if there's not capacity in those pipes and the river doesn't get to a certain elevation for us to be able to discharge, then we end up having to discharge and the constituents aren't addressed according to our permit. And that results in violations. So the idea is repairing pipes where runoff and groundwater intrudes into those collection system pipes is a fairly high priority for us. And we've got between general obligation bond and financing through, or monies through the rate increase for the wastewater system, that's how we're funding those improvements.
Are you confident that we get the job done by the deadline?
Yes.
All right.
That's outlined in the staff report? Yes.
All right.
I think we have till 27 to complete it. Mm-hmm.
Time flies.
Yes, it does.
All right. All right. Any initial questions from my colleagues of Mr. Leach at this point? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. If there's any public comment on the matter. All right. We'll close public comment. Not seeing anyone approach the mic. Back to my colleagues for deliberations. Any thoughts? Anyone? If there's not a whole lot of deliberation, we can also move right to the motion, one way or another.
I'll make a motion to adopt the staff resolution.
I'll second that motion.
All right. This motion and a second. Mr. Bradley, roll call, please.
Councilmember Barrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Summers?
See.
Councilmember Spoterato?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Deasy?
Yes.
Mayor Doring?
Yes. All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Leach, well done. Move forward. Start
Thank
that
you.
start that project tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, on to 12.2, adopt a resolution authorizing existing water customers in the Magnolia Oaks subdivision to connect to their potable water service for irrigation purposes. Mr. Camillo, you want to introduce that item? Is that Mr. Leach again?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Leach.
Mr. Leach.
So we have a brief presentation, Mayor and council members, and then I have a few comments to address the public comments we received. So hopefully we can capture some of the responses to the comments for the benefit of the public. So we'll start with the next slide. Really what the subdivision and the residents of the subdivision are seeking is connection to the city's potable water system for irrigation purposes. Currently, they have a well complex with tanks that was developed with the original subdivision. That's within an easement, and the easement documents that the property owner is responsible for the operation and maintenance of the well complex and tanks. They also have the responsibility to charge the customers of the irrigation system that's provided through the purple pipe system that was installed originally with the development. I should also note that the development had envisioned to be connected to the city's reclaimed water system once it was available, and thereby eliminating the need for the well complex. So the well system failed. I want to say it was in 24. I'll probably be corrected, but I believe it was in September of 24. And so at that point, some residents of the development came to staff and said, is there a way that we can connect to the potable water system? It took some research on our part. We solicited data, kind of went through a data analysis, and realized that they had told us that the data was inconclusive, and we kind of validated that as well through our process. So really where we're at today is kind of presenting a solution so that the residents can connect to the potable system. City Attorney's Office deemed that it's not subject to water neutrality. And so I think that was because it's not being triggered by a development. That was part of the reason why we were seeking data in terms of what's the order of magnitude of the impact on the potable system. But I think that what's anecdotally is the residents have kind of told us is that people who are watering using their potable system as it is. They're filling up pitchers and going out and watering their plants that way because they don't have access to irrigation water. So I think the long and the short of what we've presented in the staff report is to go through a process that's not unlike what we would do with kind of a standard development that's converting from irrigation use through a well to a potable system. So next slide. So the idea is that through the process that we would want to ensure that the well is abandoned. Some of the public comments that have came back is that we should bifurcate that, not put that on the residents and the property owners because they don't have control over that facility. So with legal counsel, I think there's an opportunity for us to work with Napa County, who holds the permit for this particular well that was, I think, an ag well in advance of the original subdivision, and to have them go through a process, the property owner of the well site, to abandon the well because there's an element of public health and safety for an open well that's not being utilized, not functioning, and that it should go through an abandonment process. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Leach.
Wait a minute. Okay, you may go.
So I just want to understand that point, and I think I heard something.
Okay.
I want to confirm if I heard it.
Certainly.
You're suggesting that we are going to be taking that on rather than having the residents of Magnolia Oaks.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Certainly.
Raises a question on my mind. That was a question I was going to ask, but the second question, the follow-up to that, and maybe it's going to take a little bit more checking into, but what about the developer? Are there conditions of approval or tentative map conditions that are subject to being audited for compliance? And if so, in other words, why would the city take on the financial burden? Is there another source there? I know that's a large question, difficult to
Oh,
answer,
yes.
but
Well, I can start. I don't know that the city would be taking on any financial burden related to the well abandonment. Is that what you're asking?
yes.
It would be
Oh, yeah.
more that we would go to the developer and inform them that they need to they need to go through the process of abandoning
I
the well.
misunderstood. Yeah, okay.
Not,
That's a little different.
and
Yes,
just we
yes.
wouldn't hang up the residents on that.
Understood, okay.
Correct.
I thought we were going to take on the burden, but okay, there's a.
No,
all right, all
we
right.
would initiate through the county's process enforcement action.
All right.
Shall I
Just another
continue?
question was about the backflow devices in terms of, some may have them. Are we open to looking at them going, no, that's sufficient? Or are we making a blanket? Nope, you all have to do new backflow devices. That's a little complicated. I don't
Certainly.
understand the engineering there, but
Yeah, so the main concern on that we had kind of presented in the staff report, and maybe it's under the next slide. We say remove purple pipe meters, and that's kind of one of the items that need to be abandoned is the removal of the existing meters. How that happens, I think we're open for conversation. I mean, if there's, let's get to the end and then we'll talk about the how. Here's the connections on private property. The idea behind presenting the need for backflow devices, it's really, originally it was to protect the city system, potable system, from the irrigation use. And that's a standard thing that we do on, typically on commercial irrigation systems. They all have their own backflow preventers. So since this irrigation system has been using non-potable water since its inception, we would want to protect the city system from that. So what we've heard from some of the comment letters is that many of the residents have backflow devices on those systems currently. So that's okay for the connection to protect the city from the irrigation system. The other concern would be is the resident being protected, the in-house being protected from the irrigation system. So where the backflow device is located is really kind of key and kind of a detail that we need to resolve and figure out to make sure both the city system's protected as well as the resident inside the house is protected.
all right, and there's a cost associated with that.
There is.
So I assume that we would at least contemplate looking at the developer to reimburse us for that if it's connected to an obligation, a condition of approval, or no? Or we're not that far along yet?
I don't know.
I'd like to hold the developer accountable, as you can tell, but I don't even know the developer's around.
I think the original property owner of the well site and the well complex has changed ownership.
All right.
With time.
All right.
And I think that's part of what's between that and the failure of the well is triggering.
Yeah. I don't mind accommodating the residents. I'm supportive of this entirely. I just want to make sure that, when we have to hold people accountable for the things they do, and not necessarily anybody's fault that a well went bad, but somebody should pay for that beside, and the consequences of that shouldn't be a burden of the city. But I don't want to delay, again, we want to move through it without delay, and it sounds like we're committed to doing that.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is going to be is the who and the how.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what other items do I need to speak to? I know there's another slide. That's it. Okay. Let me make sure I captured my other thoughts. I don't know, Ethan, if you had more thoughts while I was looking at my notes.
The only comment that I would have on that is that we did look fairly carefully through the mitigation measures and the conditions of approval for the project. I don't know that there was something that we could really hook in on. Certainly, as we're going through the abandonment process, we can look at that again, but it seemed pretty limited.
Yeah, that's all I asked for is a review of those. That's it. Okay, thank you.
The other thing I would want to highlight or reiterate is that the grant of easement for the well site property is really clear that it's on the property owners, not the subdivision property owners, but the well site owner it's their responsibility to own and maintain that facility as in perpetuity until there's a connection available for recycled water.
All right. Questions from Mr. Barrett?
So with that, Joe, I think that's an important point. The fact that they are now abandoning their duty, and these residents have been without water for over a year.
Over a year.
Fun. Not fun. Isn't there a hook there, Ethan, that they're liable for if there's any charges for additional backflow devices, installation, inspections? Wouldn't they be liable for that since their failure with the well is necessitating this move?
I'm not sure if that's something we want to get into. That would be a private matter, right? That would be up to the homeowners.
I'm not a lawyer. I should
Yeah,
say
I just
that.
do not want to
But I have stayed at a
pontificate
Holiday Inn.
on
Right, no, and
Their rights.
but you're
General.
correct, Mayor. Are there potential issues that the homeowners could pursue? Yeah, potentially, but that's really a matter that's an issue of the private, the CC&Rs and the relationship between the property owners and the well owner.
Worth a shot.
What do you think, Ms. Deasy?
I do have questions about the fees and the backflow devices, but I wondered if public comment would figure it out.
It's a broader discussion, it sounds like. So let's open it for public comment. Thank you, Ms. Deasy. I had forgotten that I had not opened it for public comment yet.
I'm just going to make a real brief comment. Kelly Wheaton. I think Mr. Barrick is in receipt of a email from, who is it at the city? The one that, anyway, Ian Dell, which states that all of the properties have an existing backflow device that are being inspected on a regular basis. So I can't understand the other comment.
My interpretation of what Mr. Leach said, and he can clarify, is that those would be okay. It's the location that needs to be confirmed because the house has to be protected as well. So it seemed like there was going to be an exploration there.
Right.
Is that correct, Mr. Leach?
That's how I understood it too. Thank you. It's a good point, of course, yeah. Other comments, please?
Hi, my name's Judy Weil, and I'm on the board of Magnolia Oaks and a homeowner. And yes, we haven't had irrigation water since September of 2024. The well owner owns the well, and we have terminated the well agreement with the owner since we have no water. We have state-certified backflow devices for the city water. And from what I understand from what you've said, it's the location that becomes key and why that might absorb some type of cost. We're not a new build. And I guess what we're asking for is some type of exemption or reduced fees if possible. We don't want to obviously cause the city that's in duress financially to incur more expenses. But if there's some way that we can mitigate things so the homeowners can get water and make sure that our backflow devices are in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have two more audience members who don't have to get up, and they don't look like they are going to get up. Any other comment? I pulled in.
Celeste Neely, 1360.
Might want to move your mic a little closer to you. That would be great.
Celeste Neely, 1360 Magnolia, original homeowner, bought in 2014. This well seemed like a great idea at the time. I don't think I gave it a lot of thought. I went back in some emails, and this well, do you remember when we had the two back-to-back fires in, I think, 2020? Am I right so far? Sorry, because I've lost track of all of our fires.
Yes, 2020 and 2022.
The well quit for months in 2020. That was our first instance of the well not working for months. Now, wintertime, no big deal, whatever, but the reason we had the fires is, well, fires happen, but it was so hot. and we lost plants. I mean, I lost plants at that time. I mean, they're plants. I can go rebuy them, but I don't want to spend money. I think that we have been put into a position where we didn't cause any of this. We bought into a subdivision. The developer put a well in 2008 when there was a drought. It's all sounded like a great idea. And I mean, I guess if somebody had maintained the well, we wouldn't be here. But that's not what happened. Because once the developer, as you saw, got the money, moved on, I don't know, nobody came to check on the well. I mean, we called people when the well went out. We just want a simple solution. I mean, we're not only not a new build, we have water. We have city water. We have hose bibs like every other house that is city water. I mean, if a person on a different road on Allen wanted to call a gardener and put in an irrigation system so that they didn't have to take their hose, like, would they be going through this? If they wanted to just call a plumber and tap into that hose bib and put it on a timer, would they be going through this? Because that's just all we're asking. We just want irrigation water, drip irrigation water. I don't know how it got so complicated. I really, 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 really don't know how it got so complicated. We have backflow devices. They were put in by the developer. They were supposedly checked off by the city. They're at the front of the lot, like by the sidewalk where you can almost trip on them. They protect the whole yard. It's just astounding to, this seems roughly simple to me. Please give us an exemption. Thank you.
All right. Now, Ms. Deasy, you have I'll close public comment. Ms. Deasy, you have questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I'm supportive of getting the residents the water, but I am interested in understanding what permit they need, what the cost is, and what the cost is to the city. I'm definitely still confused by the location of the backflow and whether it works. So maybe we don't know yet. We just need to go inspect quickly the backflow units. Can you just walk us through the fees? Is it a building permit fee? Is it a public works encroachment fee? And what are the costs to the city?
So it would be a building permit fee because it's all on private property. So there's not an encroachment permit fee. The expectation is that they're not excavating any sidewalk, that it would be on the private side of the meter, the existing potable water meter, and then there would be a T connection made in that service line from the meter, between the meter and the house, have a T installed, and then connect that over into the irrigation service, which presumably the backflow device is on the irrigation service. I see heads nodding, but that's... What's your question? The existing backflow devices is on the irrigation service?
On the city water side.
It's on the city potable water service.
City meter, public sidewalk, backflow device. No
Got it.
shenanigans can take place in between those.
Understood. Thank you.
All right.
I don't know if I answered.
So what does that mean?
Wait a minute. I mean, is that, I guess the question is that for every single house in the subdivision? Okay. A lot of shakes, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So does that change anything in terms of what the city needs to do and what the costs are to the residents?
So then the only question would be, is there a need to protect the residents from backflow from the irrigation system back into their residence?
So it's
because we can protect the city system, right? Because the backflow device, from what I'm understanding, is protecting the city system already. So cross-connecting between on the private side of the backflow device to the irrigation system, is there a concern of water going from the irrigation into the residence?
And
that
that's
would
like
be-
our public duty to make sure that we
Correct.
check
Correct.
that. Okay, I don't know, can we do that?
What would you like to do?
I just wanted to clarify, I just want to clarify that if the well isn't delivering water and the connection is severed from the well, the water that we're talking about is the same water that's already coming through the backflow device to the residents. And so if they do a T, they're just teeing. You don't need a building permit to do that. If I was in town or even where I live, I don't need to do that in order to put an irrigation system. So why would they have to get a building permit and go through this arduous process when all they're doing is teeing off? Here is the backflow device. Here's the water going to the house. As you said, they're putting a T. There's no irrigation mixing with the water. It doesn't make any sense to me.
All right. Did you have something to say to that? I mean, all right.
Well, yeah, I think
Public
the
comment
point
is closed.
there is that it's all potable water. So what's the beef? But you know, I'm sure it's hard to really comment without knowing the system, and you're probably reticent with saying too much. Perhaps the assumption to have Public Works folks look at it and confirm would be a good next step there.
Well, and then I think the other element that I think is still floating out there, no pun intended, is how to resolve the abandoning in place of the recycled system. So as part of the staff report was that the removal of the meters, the capping of the service line on both sides of the meter box for the irrigation system, that was part of the condition of what we were seeking as well.
Can we do tonight, Mr. Barrick? Subject to those issues, we can get direction to explore that and a hint
The
that we
intent
don't.
would be to not burden residents.
I agree.
And I think there's a collective, I think there's a collective, at least there's indication of that. At the same time, we don't want to sign the city up. There's things we don't know. We're not public works engineers ourselves. As Joe's looking at me thinking, you're not a public works engineer. But that would be the intent, Director Leach. So with that intent, finding a way and at least reporting back what that looks like, getting some more verified facts, dollar facts. I think Vice Mayor Deasy was asking really for a need of how much, what's the bottom line cost-wise to the city, and I assume she wanted to know the cost to the residents potentially. So I think we all want to see that as well. We do want to move expeditiously here for residents. At the same time, I don't want to set a precedent that then is going to be there for other potential situations. Lastly, I just want to bring up, outside of this issue of getting residents water, is we need to institutionalize the learnings of what happened here and guard against doing anything like this again in developments. This has got a long, sordid history, very painful, and I know nobody was here at the time, but there's, with the developer, et cetera, I think there's a cautionary tale here we need to learn from. And I thank everybody here for working through this. Particularly, I'd like to recognize Celeste Neely, who really was a relentless driver on many levels. And sometimes you need that kind of advocacy.
Indeed, and she's sitting here. I'll open the public comment one more time, but that's it.
Mayor, can we have a motion to go past 9?
We're already past, we have 2 minutes to go past 9. What are we looking at, another 15 minutes? This is not ready for prime time. I'd like to see more about the costs and the work that has to be done. But yes, does somebody want to make a motion to go to 9, 15, or
I make
30?
a motion to go to 9:15.
Is there a second? All in favor to go to 9:15, say aye.
Nay.
I haven't asked for the nay yet, but there is a nay. All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Summers, appreciate that. All right, open public comment, reopen public comment, but just briefly, please.
All it was a solution, potentially.
Please.
We have, if you're looking straight at my house, we have 2 meters, city meter, the reclaimed water system meter, public sidewalk, right beyond, backflow device, city backflow device, purple backflow device. It is very easy to cut the purple pipe, let's call it lateral, please. The purple pipe lateral can be easily cut within that purple box where the meter is, capped off. If you demand the meter be removed and thrown in the garbage, fine. And the well will be out of the system, or the purple pipes, the non-potable water will be out of the system for each house. And then what happens to the actual hydro head of the well, up for discussion.
Right.
Up for the well owner.
Yep.
That, to me, is just a solution. It's done. It can be verified. It's taken a picture of, put on a map. The backflow device we have should work, and we happily drip irrigate our plants.
All right, do we, what is your thought in terms of the decision tonight, or a postponement to another meeting, not too far distance, like next, 2 weeks from now? Do you think you need more time to explore that issue and the
I
cost?
think we can put something together by the 9th.
I don't want to delay it, but I think there's a little bit more information that we need from our staff to make the decision on the cost exemption. But I don't know. I mean, I'm one person, others may have different thoughts. They may want to make a decision tonight, so.
Well, there is a meeting next week, but does that not work? Where are we in order to get, because we'd have to do the work, and it's not really a week because you have to get the staff report done.
Yeah, we're posting on Thursday.
I think the 9th is fine, but, so, what do you think? Does anyone want to make a motion to continue the matter to that time, but ask for an exploration of certain data? Or certain, I don't know, more facts?
I make a motion to bring this back on December 9th with information on whether we can take the recommendation that I can't rearticulate on the backflow to make sure that we
The Neely proposal.
The Neely proposal, and so that we appropriately charge or don't charge the residents.
Second. All in favor? Yes. Any opposed? All right. I think we have a unanimous decision there. We'll come back on the 9th with a little bit more information. Thank you for your patience. Continue to work through it. Okay. Let me get back where I am. Let's see. 12.2. Whew, we're on. Looks like we finished our calendar. Anyone wishing to give a report on any of their committee duties, city council reports? Now's the time. Thank you.
I have one report out. Finance Committee, we had we met Monday. It was a good meeting. I'd like to commend our chair, Arlene Carcetti, and vice chair, Chris Warner. They're running a tight ship now with subcommittees. Those subcommittees reported out. One of the discussions was around when all of these subcommittees, they're in obviously different spaces and different complexity. And they wanted to know a drop dead date for when they needed to come to council to report out. And that looks like to be the first week of February at this point. So some of the items, they were hopeful in the beginning of January it would be done, but for various logistic reasons, they've concluded it's not going to happen by then. So I just wanted to keep everybody updated.
Thank you for that. Others? All right. Anything?
We're focused on water quality with the wastewater committee and
Quality?
quality, moving it forward as fast as possible.
All right. Okay, I have nothing to report. Thank you all. Good meeting. A lot of engagement. I appreciate it. Good job.
I enjoy it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Summers. Have a good night.